In this video, we are going to go over how to find zeros of a polynomial, and we're going to use our graphing calculator to help us today. So first, we want to find the zeros of this polynomial on a graphing calculator. So I'm going to type this function into my graphing calculator, and in this case, I'm going to use Desmos. So I'm going to go to desmos.com. I'm going to click on graphing calculator, and I'm going to type in my function. I can make this keyboard expand here. So I'm going to type f of x equals x to the third minus 3x squared minus 13x plus 15. Plus 15. All right, so I'm going to lower my keyboard and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see my entire function. And so I can see I have 3 zeros here, here, and here. So in this case, my 3 zeros would be -3, 1, and 5. So if I'm going to go back to my notes, my zeros we said were -3, 1, and 5. So how would I write that in the factored form? Well, in the factored form, we are going to take our zeros and do the opposite. So my factored form would be f of x equals x plus 3, x minus 1, and x minus 5. So my graph kind of looked like this. Let's go back to my Desmos. Went up, down, up. So it went up through -3, down through 1, back up through 5. So I had my zeros at -3, 1, and 5. All right, let's look at the second example. So it says find all the zeros on the polynomial. So I'm going to type this into my graphing calculator again. So let's go back to Desmos. And I can type in x to the third plus 6x squared minus 10x minus 60. And so I can see my graph goes up, down, up again. I have a 0 at -6, -3.126, and 3.162. Sorry, 162. So I can see I only have one real 0 at -6. So I'm going to go back actually, and I'm going to sketch my graph here. So I went up, down. Let's try that again. Because I have 2 on the negative side and 1 on the positive side. So up, down, up, -6. This was -3.162. This was 3.162. So in this case, the only real 0 I have is -6. So kind of like we were doing the day before, I'm going to use -6 and my long division to help me find my other factors. So I know one of my factors will already be x plus 6. Let's write the whole function. So f of x would equal x plus 6, because it's -6, so it's always going to be opposite. And I'm going to use my coefficients, 1, 6, -10, and -60. I'm going to do synthetic division. So I'm going to bring down this 1. Then I'm going to do 1 times -6 to get -6. So I'm going to get -6. -6 plus, or 6 plus -6 is 0. 0 times -6 is 0. -10 plus 0 is -10. Then I'm going to do -6 times -10, which is positive 60, and so that'll give me a remainder of 0. So remember, this is my constant, this is my x, and this is my x squared. So that's going to give me a polynomial of x squared plus 0x minus 10. Now I want to think about if there's anything that multiplies to -10 and adds to 0. And the answer is going to be no. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 10 because I don't need that 0x in unless I'm going to try to factor it. So my other factor is just going to be x squared minus 10. Now to solve for my zeros, I already know one of my zeros is negative 6. But to solve for my other zeros, I'm going to set x squared minus 10 is equal to 0. I'm going to add 10, and so I'll get x squared equals 10. 10 does not square root, so I'm going to get that x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 10. And so those will be my other two zeros. Let's say we wanted to double check. I know my other two zeros were negative 3.162 and 3.162. So let's take the square root of 10 and see what we get. 3.162. So that verifies that those are the correct zeros that we saw on our graph. They just weren't. We don't want to round any zeros. We want to leave them in radical form. All right, let's look at this graph. Find all the zeros of the polynomial and write it in factored form. So I'm going to find all my x-intercepts. So I have one here, and one here. So 1, so negative 3 is this guy, negative 1, and 1, 2, 3. So those are my 3 zeros or my 3 x-intercepts. Now to write it in factored form, I am going to take those and I'm going to write them as opposite. So negative 3 would be x plus 3, negative 1 would be x plus 1, and positive 3 would be x minus 3. And so that would be the equation that represents this graph. All right, let's take a look at another example. We're going to find all the zeros of this polynomial. So we're going to use our graphing calculator to help us. So let's go back to Desmos, and I'm going to type in this equation. So I'm going to have x to the 4th power plus 2x to the 3rd power minus 14x to the 2nd power minus 12x plus 48. So now this graph looks a little bit different. It's like a W, so it's going down, back up. So I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 x-intercepts, but only 2 of them are real. So let's go back to my notes and let's sketch a little picture of our graph. So it went down, up, and I know these ones were a little bit closer. That's okay. So this guy was a negative 4. This guy was about negative 2.45. This guy was 2, and this guy was 2.45. So the two real zeros we're going to use are negative 4 and 2. So again, we're going to use synthetic division to help us, and we can start with either negative 4 or 2. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to start with negative 4. I'm going to use my coefficients. So 1, 2, negative 14, negative 12, 48. So I'm going to bring down the first term. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Add to get negative 2. Negative 4 times negative 2 is 8. Add to get negative 6. Negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. So when I add those together, I'll get 12. Negative 4 times 12 is negative 48. So I'll get a remainder of 0. We always want to make sure we get a remainder of 0. All right, so it's going to leave me with the polynomial. Now I'm going to divide it by 2. So I'm going to leave where I start where I left off. Bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Add those together to get negative 6. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So again, my remainder is 0. So again, this would be c, this would be x, this would be x squared. So this is going to give me x squared plus 0x minus 6. So I want to think about if that will factor, if there's anything that multiplies to -6 but adds to 0. And the answer is it is not. So my other factor is just going to be x squared minus 6. So where's my factored form? All the way down here. Okay, so factored form. So I have -4, so it's going to be x plus 4. I have +2, so it's going to be x minus 2. Let's zoom in and write this a little bit smaller. So I had -4, so f of x is going to equal x plus 4, x minus 2, and that comes from the two real zeros that I found, the -4 and the +2. And then my last factor is going to be this x squared minus 6. So my zeros are -4, +2, and now I need to solve x squared equals -6, add 6, take the square root. 6 doesn't square root, so x is going to equal plus or minus the square root of 6. And those would be my zeros or my solutions.